Well, welcome back to another episode of the Always About People show. Obviously, we have a different setup today. We're pretty excited about testing it out.
This is great.
Nothing better than experimenting while we're live. If I'm honest with you, we were pulling this off about 10 minutes ago. So it's always fun. It's always fun. But welcome back to another episode of our show. As we've said in the past, what we try to do on this show is cover all topics related to people. How people are relating to things in the workplace, the environments that are changing, the markets that are changing, the way that we work is changing, how we develop leaders within this changing environment, how we lead people through this changing environment. And so on each of these shows and each of these episodes, we try to cover different topics related to people and how leadership affects people, how organizations affect people. And so today, we're going to continue with that theme. We have a special guest in the studio. We're going to call this a studio now. In the studio, this is Lorenzo Ogata. And Lorenzo is the newest member of the Always About People team. I'm so pumped, super pumped to have Lorenzo on the team. And we're going to be engaging in a conversation. You will see Lorenzo again. But today, we thought it would be appropriate to cover the topic of how we manage uncertainty. It's a little bit of a play on words because while uncertainty can happen to me personally, there can be uncertainty that I deal with as an individual leader. But I also am a manager and a leader, and I have to help other people manage their way through uncertainty. And so we're going to cover it from two perspectives. How do I manage through uncertainty myself? How do I manage through uncertainty with a team? And I could think of no one better to join me in this conversation than Lorenzo. He'll share a little bit of his background in just a moment, which leads him to be an expert with plenty of experience in leading teams and himself through uncertainty. But again, for those of you who are watching us live, we encourage you to comment, write in questions. We can see them live, and we would love to address any thoughts, comments, questions that you have while we're on the show. It'd be fun to address things live. As always, it's fun to just let it go, let it rip.
Let's go.
So, Lorenzo, it's so good to have you. Thanks for being here in our newly designed studio as of 10 minutes ago.
Well, thank you for having me on the team. Thank you for having me on the show. It's really an honor, and I'm excited.
Absolutely. Well, Lorenzo, I thought it would be appropriate if you just took a few minutes to share a little bit about your background for people who may or may not know you, a little bit about the opportunities that you've had to develop your own leadership and kind of the opportunities that you've seen. Maybe tell a little bit about your family too, but we'd love to know more about Lorenzo.
Yeah, there's plenty of uncertainty in leading when the family's growing. So I'm happily married to my wife, May. We just celebrate 6 years. So it's been incredible. And we have two little ones, a 5-year-old Aria and a 2-year-old Zoe, who runs the house.
The 2-year-old runs the house.
The 2-year-old runs the house.
Perfect.
And talk about uncertainty of switching from 1 to 2 was a tough challenge. So that was interesting.
Zone defense to man-to-man.
Well, we're still man-to-man right now, but we're not, I don't think we're switching to zone. I don't know if I want to go that far. But yes, so great family and really learned a ton from that. And as far as work-wise, I've been in ops, sales management, leadership, and have seen companies that are growing. And it's just kind of like, hey, hang on tight and we'll see where we go from here. And then there's kind of been the downsize. There's been reorgs. There's been change in leadership. And so all of those different situations, I still feel like it boils down to the same things. And I'm excited that we'll get to chat about that.
Yeah. Well, for those of you who are on LinkedIn, I would encourage you to go and look at Lorenzo's announcement of joining Always About People, because one of the things that stuck out to me were the various comments that people made about you as a leader, as their leader, as an effective leader of them. And I think it goes to show just how much people respect you and really the level of help that you were to so many people as you manage through uncertainty. Because while we won't be naming any specific companies or organizations on the show, we will be addressing specific situations. Yeah. And as we promise here on the Always About People show, we want to leave you with practical insights. And so the goal here would be that people, our guests, would walk away with some thoughts and some practical insights, maybe some wisdom on how they can lead teams through uncertainty.
Yeah.
So in our current market, obviously, depending on what industry you're in, we're talking about maybe changes in mortgage rates. We're talking about changes in the real estate market. We're talking about different market conditions, financial conditions.
Mm-hmm.
But just 2 years ago, we were talking about a whole different uncertainty.
Sure.
It was the uncertainty of COVID.
Yeah.
And all of the unknowns. But we live in a world of VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And so regardless of what season we're in, we're going to face uncertainty.
Yeah.
So Lorenzo, I think we just jump straight in.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're faced with uncertainty as a leader, as a manager, with a team, what are some things that you think through first?
So whether it's positive or negative, change is hard for people.
Yeah.
And some people adapt really well, but especially when you're leading a team, depending on the size, then you just have to be prepared that it could hit each person individually differently. And so with that in mind, it's important to know too, when change comes, naturally as human beings, we're going to think of how does this affect me? And so as a leader, I consider myself very people-centric, but even to my degree, I have to figure out, well, how does this change, again, positive or negative? How does it affect me? And then how does it affect the people that I'm directly connected to? And so I try to make sure that if I have the opportunity, we could talk about that too, but if I have the opportunity to digest this information prior, is I really try to think about the individuals in each seat and how are they going to be affected by it, and to be able to clearly explain to them as well and not kind of dance around that.
Okay, so let's think about how we as leaders process through how it affects me first.
Right.
What are the questions that you ask yourself? What are the things that you're thinking about?
Yeah, sure. Naturally, it could be, who do I report to? Does my job description change? What does my trajectory change? Do I have a different group of team members that I'm going to be leading now? Do I have team members that I'm leading anymore? And so all of those things can naturally just come to mind of where am I at in all of this?
Yeah. So one of the things that we just skipped over that I think I want to go back to is your comment, change is hard. Change is hard. Why is change so hard for people? And then when you think about that, like when we're asking our questions, okay, how does this change affect me? What is it that we're trying to protect? What is it? Why is it that change is so hard?
Yeah, I think we naturally go in with our ebbs and flows of what we expect in the workday. And when we get into a situation where we don't know what it's going to look like, again, even if it could potentially be better, it's hard for people to release what they have been familiar with, what they have been comforted with.
Yeah. So I think it's the unknown. I mean, if we could categorize it, we would say it's actually the fear. It's the unknown, it's the fear, it's the insecurity of change, because what we've known was security. Now there's insecurity, and fear brings about all kinds of stories and narratives, and we start making things up. And so I think what we would share with our guests is, obviously, when uncertainty happens, there's this moment where fear engages your brain in the amygdala. You've got cortisol levels, you've got adrenaline levels increasing in your body, which are creating all of these different reactions on whether you can think logically, rationally, strategically, whatever else. And then there's the emotional response, which is fight.
Right.
It's flight, I'm going to run, or it's freezing for most people. And leaders experience that same thing. So in the moment, we're kind of coming back up to speed.
Right.
We have to ask ourselves as leaders, how does this affect me? So it's like, bring your brain back to a rational place. How does this affect me? And you're working through those questions.
Yep.
And then where do we go from there?
I think it really also comes down to, what are my values? And that's what I need to be able to lead from. And we'll talk about this a little bit more too, but in times of uncertainty, you have to focus on what you are certain of. And for you as an individual, as a leader, it's important to know that. And it's also important for your team to know that too. Yeah. So I think it's important to go into a team meeting or an announcement and share, like, these are the things that I'm uncertain about too, but here's what I'm certain of. Here is who I am. We've talked about my values. Here's our team culture, and those things don't change.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to get us through this. Is we're going to get through it together, and we're going to stick with those values.
So I just made me think about values in general. Some people have defined values as those things that make my life meaningful. And so oftentimes when we're caught in these places of uncertainty and fear and insecurity, we may act out of alignment with our values.
Sure.
So you may see some fear response or emotional response that is not in alignment with my values, but I just got done telling you, here are my values. And so I think really important takeaway would be engaging the team in this process of saying, okay, here is what I'm certain of. Here's what I'm not so certain of. And it's transparency, it's vulnerability that sets the team up for success. So I know that one of my values is authenticity. And so I would need to come to that place of uncertainty with an authentic self to say, guys, I'm not really sure what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
Here's what I am certain of. Here's what I'm uncertain of.
Right.
Yep. All right. So I've come with some values to the team, but I haven't really clarified the uncertainty for them. What do I do next?
Yeah. So when they just don't know what's coming next, it's really important. I mean, a lot of times as a manager, you may not have been brought into the loop of why these changes are coming. Or there are times where I've been told the same exact time as the team members that I'm leading. So it's on the fly. It's trying to get as much information as I can. And I think you kind of alluded to it earlier, actually, is where it's just sometimes it has to be, here's what I have, and I'm going back to get more information for us.
Yeah.
And that probably applies a lot of the time. And I think it's okay to do that, though. You much rather not try to overcompensate. And I think whether it's young managers or a new manager, you may want to overcompensate and try to be the hero and try to come up with the reasons and come up with all the answers and the solutions. But you really set yourself up and your team for failure and to lose trust, because if later on it doesn't pan out that way,
right, then
it would have been just much better if you just said, hey, I'm going to get the answers for us. And as soon as we have it, we'll be back right here and we'll talk about it.
Yeah. That's interesting, because I think one mistake that leaders make in uncertainty is not sharing anything because they don't feel like they have the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so I think one significant takeaway that I just sort of mentally logged is share what you can, share what you are certain of, even though you might not have the whole picture. At least you're giving people what you have. And so there's that trust that's been established. Right. There's a vulnerability and a transparency to say, look, this is what I know now, or this is what I can share now. Right. Because there will be certain things that as a manager and a leader, you're asked not to share. And so you need to honor that. Mm-hmm. This is what I can share. I'm going back for more information.
Absolutely. And I think important too is create some sort of feedback loop of how they can share. Mm-hmm. And if an organization too, if you're going through change or uncertainty, also creating that feedback loop from the manager level up as well. And more people often than not want to be part of the solution, and they want to do well at their job. They want to have clarity. And so having that feedback loop is important.
I agree. I think what's funny is that you said people want to do good at their job. It's right. Like, I know we've said this before, but I think that there's some belief system out there that's like, people just want to come and screw up every day. You know, or like there's a generation of people out here who just don't take their work seriously. Well, the truth is people want meaning and purpose in their work. They want to come and do a good job. They want to be validated for that. They want to be recognized for that. They want to be valued for that. Right. And so the more information we can give people in the midst of uncertainty, right, the better chance they have of performing well. Right. And that's ultimately what they want. So like they want to get through this uncertainty.
Yeah. And I think you hit on an important note. They want to be performing well. And it's important that in an uncertainty or market shifts and changes, what does success look like in that season? Mm-hmm. And so what was our metrics at one point, or what was our expectations? Maybe that needs to shift a bit. And so it's really important from the top down. How can we clearly identify how our team can win.
Yeah.
And that's what they're going to really be looking for and trying to cling to in uncertainty as well.
Yeah. So one of the things that we talk about about people with our clients is this idea of structural clarity, role clarity. Hey, has anything changed to the structure? And then you were just hitting on it. But if something's changed with my role and how I'm measured and what makes me effective each day, please help me. Give me some time to process it, but help me think it through. And then we talk also about just the more clarity you can provide for people, the more they know how to succeed, the better. And so maybe one question that I have for you is, in the midst of uncertainty, do you have any wisdom or advice on how often we should be communicating with our team?
You probably want to over communicate. So if you feel like you don't know, then you should just lean towards over communicating. And another fascinating thing, like you said, with, hey, people just want to do their job well, ask your team, hey, how often would you like to hear from me? And it could be a Zoom. I mean, we're in remote work now, hybrid work. It could be a Zoom where it's, I don't have any updates, but I just want to be here to listen.
Yeah.
Or, hey, I have, it could be on the fly too. Just got an update. A lot of people want to know as soon as possible. And so lean towards over communicating and just asking them, like, what would you like? How often? If I don't get any updates, would you like to hear 2 times, 3 times a week? Could be quick, could be short. And then it comes in different forms too. Like it could be the team meeting setting, but also it's important more times than none. The one-on-ones are going to be critical. Those are the times where in the team meeting, if you have a healthy culture, most people will share, but it's going to be in those one-on-one times where if you've been doing them consistently and there's trust and security there, some of the things that they're going through and they're going to speak more openly there as well. Yeah. And again, just be mindful that everyone processes it differently. So if you have a team of 10 people, there might be 2 people that, hey, I'm fine. I'm just going to keep rolling with it. No big deal to me. Yeah. And there's going to be others that they need to be checked up on almost daily.
Yeah, I love that. So as a leader, understanding what each individual person needs, because again, the assumption that everybody needs the same level of communication is not true. People will handle the uncertainty, the fear differently. And so how can I do my best to minimize that fear for you?
Or the method. You even talked about how frequent, but even the method now, again, we're going hybrid and there's different styles. There's Slack, there's Zoom, there's a bunch of things now too.
Yeah.
So what is even the method that they should be receiving it in?
That's great. So when we think about leaders in these uncertain times, I was trying to process through what's the question that people are asking. Like the question that they're asking is, gosh, am I going to lose my job? Am I going to have a job tomorrow? How am I going to take care of my family? And so what I want to help everyone, at least that's watching, understand is an individual in their brain can jump from, hey, things are uncertain, to I'm not going to be able to take care of my family, to we're not going to keep our house, in a matter of like a millisecond. And so our job as leaders is to do whatever we can to reduce that uncertainty, to minimize the fear and the emotional response within our teams. And then one thing that I just want to highlight for you, if you missed it, is this idea, like, just ask your team how they want to be communicated with and how often. And that made me think of this. Oftentimes, we've said this before, but in the absence of information, people make up stories. And so your ability as a leader to tell your team, here's when I'm going to communicate to you. If I haven't communicated anything, nothing has changed. So please don't go making up stories based upon things that you haven't heard or don't know. And I think it's a great way of handling it.
Yeah, I think that's where the company and all the way down to the leader, you almost have to reestablish, like, who are we? And, what are we about? And it really needs to be stated, but also action needs to follow that too. And that's, if you don't do those things, then like you said, you give a lot of space for a lot of conversations to be had. And it's the meeting after the meeting that takes place.
Yeah. And I think I'll circle back to somewhere where we started, which was around values, the values that you carry as a leader. You know, we work with companies where the values are on the wall.
Yeah.
They're words, but values aren't just words, they're carried through in behaviors and actions. And so your ability to not just state your values in a time of uncertainty, but to behave in a way that's in alignment with your values. Lorenzo, I think one of my questions, though, is in a time of uncertainty, how do I rally a team, even around the organization or around the corporation or around what the organization said they were or said they were going to do?
Right.
If you've got a team that's raising questions about the organization, how do you handle that in a place of integrity as a leader?
Yeah. One, I think you give them space to share those thoughts. I think the tendency is like, let's not let this turn into a negative scenario, but people want to be heard. And especially if they're seeing things in the news, and again, they're filling in these stories themselves. So I much rather actually hear them in a setting that I have placed. I've set the rules for the meeting, like the expectations. And so I want them to be able to voice that. And then from there, it can be like, well, yeah, acknowledge the elephant in the room. There is some distrust right now. But again, what is our team values? What are your personal values? And why do you do what you do? And even if they're not a leader, a lot of people, hey, if they're in mortgage, they want to help people get their home. They want to help them accomplish that dream. That dream is still there for customers. And so let's be committed to the ones that we have, and we'll continue to fight for each other. And sometimes that's what you have, and that's what you got. And it's really important that you clearly define those things so that everybody can get together.
Yeah, I think that just reminded me of, it's in times of fear and insecurity where each of us can operate under a tremendous amount of pressure. And anyone who's ever done anything under a lot of pressure, whether it was a performance, an athletic event, writing, speaking, speech class, whatever it was where you felt under tremendous pressure, oftentimes that pressure can minimize performance. How do we bring people back to a place of remember why you're doing this, your values, like the reason, the purpose, where you want to go with your career? Because again, you're simply refocusing the brain away from fear, insecurity, anxiety to a place of rationally thinking this through. Because remember, you just went from uncertainty to the loss of a job, and now I'm not going to have a house in a millisecond. How do I bring that person back on my team to a place where they're thinking rationally and logically through, listen, guys, this is what we know. This is what I know. This is what I'm able to share with you. Why are you doing this? Why are we doing this as a team? Here's maybe how you're going to be measured in your performance going forward. How can we collaborate? How can we come together as a team to effectively keep moving forward?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think it's just understanding that each person's going to process it differently. And even if we're leading our team well, we have to understand that people come with their past experiences of a different job, a different team, or even personal circumstances that they're going through. So just giving them the space to all process that differently, and knowing that, hey, if someone's acting out of character and a little bit defensive or a little bit negative, that there might be something underneath that. And not just going, oh, well, they're just negative and they're not in it. They're not going to be in it for the long haul, and we just got to move on without them. I just think that's kind of the worst scenario that you can get to. And it's just really trusting and believing the best of each other. And again, those one-on-ones are going to be critical for that, of really diving deep. Hey, I know in our team meeting, you mentioned this. Can you talk to me about that? And giving them space to share that.
Okay. I think that's really key. I think one practical takeaway would be, if you're perceptive as a leader to the actions, behaviors, words of your team in the midst of uncertainty, how do you follow back up on that? So you don't just sort of gloss over it. In the team environment, maybe you allow it, you move forward. But what would you recommend people do, leaders do, managers do to follow back up with people after meetings?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I find more and more that people want feedback in the moment. They don't want to like, so if my one-on-one is in a week and a half, I mean, the moment's passed at that point. And so a lot of times it's just, hey, can we have a conversation about how you're feeling about this, and just opening it up. And again, it's important, I think, as a leader, sometimes we feel like we have all the answers, and because we've gotten to this position or however it may be. And I really try to challenge myself of, don't go into the conversation assuming that I know why this is happening. And you just don't know what people are going through outside of the workplace and outside of even the change that is causing difficult circumstances. And so again, when you go into it, you address it. Hey, this was said during our team meeting. I'm just concerned about you, and just want to know if you're comfortable. Would love to give you the space to share about this and what's going on. Or also, again, in uncertain times, focusing on what is certain. Are there resources that the company has that can help people during that time? So is there counseling? Is there coaching? Whatever those times may be. Even if it's a day of PTO for mental health, if it's, a leave of absence, if they need that, just being mindful of, hey, here are the resources. So I would you should always share those. But if the individual, if you can sense that something is going on and they just don't feel comfortable sharing for whatever reason that may be, I would always point towards the resources of like, hey, it doesn't have to be me, but I just know that in uncertain times, I don't want you to feel like you're in this alone. And I just want to make sure that there's someone available for you.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Lorenzo, we were so deep in conversation that I think we may have missed some of these questions. Maybe we can take an opportunity to go back and just say, so Chris is saying, does this also impact our fear of stepping out of our own comfort zones? So it's like the reality of uncertainty is like, this isn't comfortable.
Yeah.
Oftentimes that's referred to as a catalyst of change, which is like when this isn't comfortable anymore. How do I deal with this? So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's stating that too. I think it is being open and honest of the fact that even you are outside of your comfort zone right now. If we talk about the market, there's lots of different predictions. At the end of the day, none of us know for sure. None of us are certain. So we're predicting, here's our strategy in it. And if the market shifts, then we'll come up with another one. It's just, I think, again, the honesty there is going to be key for people of seeing what our actions are and if they're lining up with the words.
And I think it just once again goes back to values. So when we're uncertain and when it's uncomfortable, what are my values?
Right.
So for me, it's authenticity, it's scrappy, it's excellence. All right. How am I going to be real with people about how I'm feeling and how I'm processing? How am I going to step into this next season and the uncertainty with excellence? And I'm going to get real scrappy.
Right.
And we're going to figure this thing out. And so whatever an individual's values are, I think in the midst of uncertainty and in the midst of what feels really uncomfortable, the piece that you can go back to are those values, those things that determine what makes your life meaningful. And if you can circle back to those, I think that'll help you as a leader.
Yeah. And that's great too, to be thinking about as a company or as a manager, what are we acknowledging during this time? What are we rewarding? So if it is scrappy, does that line up with the examples that we're sharing of someone that is performing really well?
Yeah.
Because right now it might not need to be the person that's putting in way too much overtime and is just trying to fill up the time. It's the person that really is trying to come with solutions and make the most of the time that they have.
Yeah, that's great. All right, let's see if we can recap this to leave you with a few practical insights. Because while we love the conversation, we want the sort of the framework of this show to be, hey, here's what we're dealing with.
Right.
Let's talk our way around it, but then let's leave you with some practical insights. So in these moments of uncertainty, we talked first that you have to deal with the uncertainty for yourself personally. Go back to your values. Anything you'd add there?
Nope. That's right.
So once you've gone back to your own values, then you're ready to move on to the team. And as an individual leader, I've processed through, what does this mean for me? And how do I need to respond in alignment with my values? What are the corporate values that I need to be aligned with?
Right.
And then going to my team and saying, here's what I can share with you in full transparency and vulnerability. Here's what I do know. And sharing with them exactly what they know or what you know, but then giving them space to process.
Yep.
In that moment, also asking them, how often do you want to be communicated with? Because as new information comes, I want to keep you informed. Anything else you'd add to that?
Yeah, I think just clarity is key. So as much clarity as I can get from directors and above to tell them how is it that they can win in this season and how is our company looking to win. So just as clear and concise as possible. And then, like you said, if you don't have that clarity yet, hey, here's what I'm going to be advocating for. As soon as I get this, I will let you know.
Perfect. So clarifying for people how they can still win in this season through the uncertainty, maybe the redefinition of roles, the redefinition of metrics. Then in that team environment, when you see or perceive changes with individual people, making sure that you're getting time one-on-one to check in, to make sure you understand what's going on and to help people walk through. The last thing you left us with was make sure you understand the resources that are available to you through the company and point people to the resources that may help them.
Yeah, just focusing on what you do know and what is certain. And so if I were to leave it with anything is, hey, as a leader, what can you depend on is here are my values. I'm here. I'm fighting for you. And that's what we're going to carry into this uncertainty.
Yeah. How to manage uncertainty. Here are my values. I'm fighting for you. We're in this together. That's awesome. Thanks, Lorenzo. Thanks for joining us. Hey, to those of you who join us regularly, thanks for joining us again. Thanks for submitting comments and questions. And to those of you that we didn't get to, we apologize, but we'll follow up later. Again, the whole reason we had this conversation was to help people manage through uncertainty, managing a team, managing yourself. And I'm excited about the future conversations that we'll have together.
Great.
For those of you who join us every week on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube, we appreciate you supporting what we're talking about. We hope that it's helpful. We hope that you were able to take away at least one practical thing that will help you lead people in the days to come. Until next time, thank you for joining us at the Always About People show. We'll see you later.